Let's just jump right in. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom arrived really just yesterday. We've only had it for technically a few of us played it a little bit that late Thursday night because it released at midnight East Coast
Bro,
time and
I was
unlocked.
playing on the Steam Deck like 2 weeks ago.
I know you
Okay.
were. I know you
All
were.
right.
Pro
All right.
gamer. I
Oh, is
get
the
it.
Steam Deck
I get it.
verified?
I
Steam
get
Deck
it.
verified?
Yeah,
Steam Deck
it's
verified?
Steam Deck
Mods to make
verified.
it
I read
better.
all the leaks.
4K.
So we've had various amounts of time spent with it, but actually, I want to start with Dan because not only were you streaming it, I want to get your thoughts on what the reactions were from folks who are watching you stream it, but also you just played Breath of the Wild and finished
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah.
I did.
And so it's just interesting as you transition from that into this, just your opening thoughts. What's the first thing that comes to mind in your first impressions of Tears of the Kingdom?
So I had told you guys I was going to stream it and probably then just kind of put it down because I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to finish it before 16. Because when 16 comes out, I'm kind of sort of going to focus on that pretty much only just
Why?
then.
Why would you
Um,
do that?
Same.
I don't know. I'm just
I mean, that's me with Diablo, honestly. It's like
Diablo,
Same
yeah.
with Diablo, yeah.
But yeah, it's I kind of like right now I have that itch of Zelda because I started Breath of the Wild again, and like it just felt like riding a bike again. It just was really comfortable, and I'm playing this now, and it just kind of feels like I am sort of continuing that, right? It's almost like a part two of it, and it's just I'm not feeling like wanting to step away from it, to be honest with you. So
Does that
I
surprise
might
you that you don't feel like you want to step away from it?
not really because I put in probably an extra like 15-20 hours with Breath of the Wild there at the end because like I still ran around, did some extra stuff, but then I did the other two divine beasts, and then fought Calamity again, and so yeah, I guess right now I'm just kind of like I'm actually really enjoying this, and maybe I will just try to kind of rush it at the end if I'm still feeling like I still have a lot to do.
Yeah.
And then like kind of circle back around to it to do any extra stuff. But yeah, the stream, as far as the streaming new games can be tricky. Just because it's either you're probably going to most likely get people that don't want to be spoiled.
Right.
Or just like I mean, humbly, I don't have like a crap ton of followers. Like, I feel like you have to have like a crap ton of followers where people just don't care and they just want to hang out with the streamer, whether they're playing a new game or not. And that's when like you're getting good numbers. So it was a relatively quiet stream, but it was really fun. Because it's just fun kind of sharing that with everybody.
Yep.
And,
I would say, and you can continue. I just wanted to comment on the streaming this game. I actually feel like this game feels like Elden Ring, and the reason I say that is like it's good to stream because you'll get people like me to watch just because there is no one path.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
literally open. So it's kind of cool to see what other people figure out, and then you're like, well, I want to do that in my game, or I want to get that or whatever. So I actually think it's a good game to stream just because there's so much to it that nobody's going to do the exact same thing. So you're not spoil. I understand you're still spoiling stuff, but what I'm saying is people are going to see you do stuff that maybe they haven't experienced in their own playthrough and will want to.
Yeah, I wonder if those numbers go up if you like try it in a week or two. You know what I mean?
Well,
so you're not spoiling the beginning of it or like what
right,
how that opens
because it's
up.
literally story.
They're just catching you in the middle.
Stuff.
They're just because like a lot of that, like 80% of both of these games, Breath of the Wild, and I assume this game, are getting to the next plot point and being distracted getting there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Elden Ring, not like Elden Ring. So if
Yep.
someone catches you on a stream, there's almost like a major chance that they're not going to catch a story beat anyways,
Well, there was more people popping because I did do a couple of streams just to kind of also like make sure that I finished Breath of the Wild before Tears of the Kingdom. I did a couple of Breath of the Wild streams prior, and people were popping in because the game is like 6 years old. So at that point, a lot of people have already experienced it, so they were just kind of hanging out.
So the physics simulator does make it fun to watch. So like if you trip and fall down a mountain and you have a whole room full of people watching that's a good time. Yeah.
It is extremely, especially in this one because there's all new elements that they threw into this one, and things are bonkers, combining items and stuff, which we'll discuss.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a fun. I'm assuming none of you were there, right? Because one of you would have commented on how I was dressed.
No? I didn't even know
you
were
dressed.
I didn't even know you were streaming.
Did you dress as Tingle?
Did you dress as Tingle?
Yeah.
Wait, so hold on. Why is that the immediate? Why was
I don't
that?
know. That's just
Me
the
and
one
Tim
I thought
both were right there, though. I think that's the obvious choice that you
Hey,
would staple.
listen.
I don't know. Maybe I was. Maybe I was.
We
Maybe I
can
wasn't.
only find out by going to watch your stream. I get it.
Okay, that's fair.
Maybe I was. Maybe I wasn't. I don't know. Maybe I
Everyone,
wasn't.
go check out the stream. Go see what he's wearing.
But it was really fun, and
Tag me next time you stream, and I'll try to join.
Okay.
By the
your
way,
friends
when you
to be
post
nice
it
to
in
me.
our Facebook group, because I'm not on a ton of social media platforms,
Yeah.
I'm really not. So when you post it, I almost always Facebook shows it to me a day after you posted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Same
Again, it's
almost
streaming,
always.
Streaming is a very to me, streaming is a very you just either have to be the type of person that's into it or not, and that's fine. Like it's just some people just aren't into really watching streams, and I wasn't really before I started doing it, but now I kind of do it more often while I'm working, kind of hanging out and listening and a little bit of chatting. But yeah, it's just it was really fun, and the beginning of the story is the game is super like ominous. The music is like really creepy, which actually kind of ties to the end of Breath of the Wild, because when you finally get to the castle, the music's like kind of building, which is what like previous Zelda games do, like with the Ganon theme and stuff. Like it starts off kind of a little simple, but you're hearing that Ganon theme, and it builds and it builds and it builds, and that's kind of what it did there, which was really cool. Yeah, it's just I think Hyrule Castle at the end of Breath of the Wild was actually my favorite part overall. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah,
but
same.
when you got to the castle, it was so awesome. It was so cool.
It just felt like there was a lot of places to go, and a lot of you didn't have to go and explore much, but you could if you wanted to, and I think that's like the DNA of this game and the new one. Of just like it's all there if you want it to be there, or you could just run straight to the next thing that you need to do. So it's whatever you want to do.
But I will say that the beginning of this game already feels, in a good way, for me anyways, for some people it wouldn't be, a bit overwhelming already out the gate.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys feel that way, but with the mechanic of attaching things, I don't know if...
I'm more comfortable now, but like putting myself back in that first hour, I will say that they piecemeal it to you pretty good. They give you one thing and they're like, all right, you're going to focus on doing this for a little bit. But like by the time I land on Hyrule from like the tutorial island or whatever, that's where I felt it, where I'm just like, I'm like crippled with anxiety. I've gotten beyond that, but like once I got boots on the ground and like, it was like, okay, go. And I'm like, what?
It's interesting. I didn't feel overwhelmed, but I did feel a bit of FOMO with like, am I doing the right weapon combos here? It was more about that. So I didn't really feel overwhelmed. Sure. It was more of like, I might need a guide immediately to find out like, oh, combine this and this, and you have a badass sword. Right?
Well, I think it was just the elements of like them explaining the different like energy cells with this thing and that thing. And then it's like, wait, what's all the different little items here?
Well, that's the funny, like when they were explaining it, I was like, you know what? I'm not reading. I don't know what the freak you're talking about, right?
Shocker.
I totally was like, no, I'm not doing this. And so at first I was like, okay, this is going to be a lot. But then when I started just playing, I was like, oh, everything's like easy. Like this isn't that hard. It's kind of like the example I would use when you said, hey, this is kind of overwhelming. I was going to share this morning. It was like kind of my third big session, right? So I start where I left off the night before, which is I literally walked into a shrine and I was like, I'm not in the mood for a puzzle. I need to go to bed. So I wake up, first thing I'm doing is a puzzle. Well, it's the first shrine that I would say that I got to that was like it's huge. The room's huge and there's a lot going on. And I'm like, I don't know what you want. I'm going to assume you want me to go to the left, whatever. I start there. So I start piecing it together. I get to what I would consider the end of the puzzle. It's just one room because some shrines have multiple rooms. It's just one room. And in this room, a ball's dropping down, and you clearly have to get the ball to the drop down and get it to the right into this like roller coaster like thing that pops it into the hole, like you've done in Breath of the Wild, right? So I'm grabbing all the material I have. They put a bunch of material in there, and I'm piecing things together, and I'm like getting angry because I'm like, first of all, having trouble piecing them together, then having trouble sticking them to the wall. And at the same time, there is where the ball drops down, there's this thing that's constantly looping. It's just moving. And you've got to stop that because you got to get the ball to ricochet, hit that, and then it's going to roll into that and then hit the roller coaster like thing, right? So I'm trying to stop that. It's knocking everything apart. I'm getting angry. I'm 45 minutes in, and I'm like, what the flying fuck is going on here? Why can't I piece this together? Why is everything falling apart? I had to restart it 4 different times because I got the ball in there twice, but the ball didn't go up. And I'm like, I must have not generated enough speed. So I'm angry about that. I'm like, I finally piece this together. It takes me 10 minutes to piece together. I get the ball in there, and the ball can't even reach the hole because, again, it's looped. So it goes up, and it doesn't have enough speed. It drops down in the middle, and then I'm like, okay, let me grab the ball to reset it. You can't grab the ball. Once the ball's there, it's stuck. So I had to restart. So finally, 45 minutes in, I'm like, YouTube. Fine, I'll YouTube it. Dude, this guy literally moves 2 pieces. He's not even piecing anything together. He just moves. He moves one thing over, the ball hits that. He moves another thing there, and then once you get the ball in the basket, spoiler if this is a big deal to you, once you get the ball in the basket, it isn't supposed to go fast to launch. It's supposed to get stuck there. I was actually doing it right. You're supposed to use this little pin, drop the pin into the circular thing, and it'll knock into the pin, and then the pin will run into the ball and push the ball into the hole. And I'm like, wow. Freaking serious? I solved this 30 minutes ago, and I did a bunch of unnecessary extra stuff that just made me angry.
Developers are just laughing at you.
So my point in sharing this, but first of all, I'm glad
you should be streaming this, I think.
I was going to say, I am so glad I wasn't streaming. The second of all is it goes back to kind of like what Kyle and Jeff were talking about. I think they talked about it on the show, or at least in the chat, that they're like, I'm playing Jedi Survivor, and I'm looking at these puzzles, and I'm overthinking it, and the solution is always the simplest thing. And that's what I'm finding with a lot of these Zelda ones. Some rooms you walk into, you're like, how am I supposed to get up there with 2 bolts? Like, how do I do that?
Here's a pile of wood and a barrel, and get up there. You're like,
I don't know what I'm doing. But a lot of times, the solution is usually pretty simple. And that's what I think is funny. It's almost like they over-show you stuff, so you get, like, anxiety, and then they're like, you just had to move that piece over, and then move that piece over, and you're good.
But what's actually fun about this game, too, and I think it speaks to sort of the I don't know if the word genius is too strong, but like there's a decent amount of the times where like you were overcomplicating it, but you still could have solved it, and it's still kind of fun because you got super creative with it.
You did your own
and you solved it. Like you basically didn't do what they kind of envisioned for you to do, and you still solved the thing.
I was pinning boards to the so basically when I say pin, they're like nails. So I was attaching boards to the nails and plecking the nails into the
almost
wall.
Like Plinko. Like Plinko?
Yeah, but when the ball would hit it, it would knock the board off. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? This is ridiculous. And I'm yelling at the game. I'm like, you clearly want me to do this. Why are you stopping me? And the game's like, no,
I didn't do anything.
I didn't actually want you to do that. You're just an idiot.
Derek's here making sure we don't get a PG-13 rating again. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, that was 2 F-bombs.
It's funny. My son and I had a similar thing. It's right in the beginning island where you need to get from this island up, and there's like a track that half of it is missing a big chunk of it.
Yeah.
We both solved that in very different ways. Like I asked him how he did it.
So there was a way to solve that? Because I was trying to look at it. I was looking around, and I was like, I don't think this.
I was getting a little frustrated, and I finally realized, let me just do what I did on the last puzzles. Use those 2 hooks, hang the cart from underneath just the left side, put the fan on the back, and it zips you right out.
Okay, yeah.
So I just did like a little hanger solution. Well, he used those hooks and the fans to create a really lengthy like attachment on either side on the right side. So like as he hit the gap, the hooks kind of held it in place as he hit that part, and it carried him right out. Like really creative. I didn't think about that, But anyway, it is very, very cool to hear various ways of solving stuff, especially in I think the shrines, maybe there's usually a more specific path you kind of have to go, but in the open world, there's all kinds of ways to get up the cliff or whatever.
Dude,
what's nice about the shrines are, and this is the same from I guess the last game as well, is that they're usually only like 1.5 minutes to maybe 4 minutes long, depending on what you're doing. Yeah. So if you're beating your head against the wall on something, and like
45 minutes. 45
yeah,
minutes.
I mean for you, I give up in about 4 or 5 minutes and look up on YouTube. So if it gets too stressful, like, and you give up, just know that like you're gonna get out of this situation in 1 to 4 minutes. You don't have to stress it too bad, because I think especially for me, like being such an anti-puzzle person in video games, you would think I would hate a game like this. It's like 80% puzzles and everything like that. But like I do like physics and mechanics and stuff like that.
Yes.
Even if I can't figure stuff out, being able to experience them, even though I am kind of cheating in a way by being told how to do them, it's still entertaining to me to kind of watch the physics at play. One of my favorite puzzles I've solved so far is like putting like boards on the side of wheels that turn, like generator wheels that turn, and those are on another board, and they became paddle boards, and I had like a paddle board, so it's like huge, gigantic.
That's awesome.
It was so cool, and like it was just one of those things where I didn't get to that myself, but when I saw what he was doing immediately, once he put a couple pieces on, I was like, "Oh my god, I know what's going on here." Let me figure this out, and I can do the rest of it. And
I'm glad you said that. You don't have to go watch an entire guide from start to finish. You might just need the first 10 seconds to be like, "Got it."
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of times,
just get the ball rolling.
Yeah,
sometimes you really are just trying to get a ball rolling.
When when you walk into a room, you might first be like I was saying, like what are you wanting me to do? And then if somebody shows you. And again, this isn't necessary. Some of them, it's like you walk in a room, you're like, you want me to tie these rockets to the cart, and then I'm going to shoot the cart across the room, which, by the way, that was a completely awesome shrine. Yeah. There's like 3 areas where you shoot yourself in a cart. But like stuff like that, some of them are real easy, which is cool. And then some of them you're like, dude, I don't know. And then you just watch a video and then, I get what you're trying to get me to do, and then you can solve it on your own, which is cool too. But I'm the same way as Kyle. Like I absolutely hate, for the most part, puzzles. But I don't think that I'm like making an exception for Zelda, where I'm like, well, I'm putting up with it just because of nostalgia, or I better like it because reviewers said I like it. I actually have a lot of fun solving these.
Yeah.
And because of the nature of them being quick and not feeling like, God, I gotta go through another puzzle. They're spaced out. Like I'm going through shrines. If I see it, I go. Like I'm not passing any of them, but I'm not actively like, that's not what I'm searching for. I'm exploring, and then when I run into them, I'm going to. So I'm doing about a shrine every 30 minutes to an hour in my gameplay, because I think I'm like 10 to 12 hours in, and I've completed at least 14 or 15 shrines. So I'm doing about one every hour, one every 45 minutes. And so I enjoy them, and I've only gotten hung up on that one. Most of the other ones are pretty quick solutions, or if I get overwhelmed, I'll just YouTube it real quick. But yeah, they're necessary, and I don't mind doing them because they're tied to something that's important to me, and that's you can get healthier and get more hearts, or you can get more stamina.
This is this game's version of grinding. Like, hey, do you want to get more powerful? Go knock out 4 shrines. You'll get a whole nother heart, And I think that's that carrot on the stick. And this is the same as last game, But like that carrot on the stick is very alluring to me. And stamina is important, just in terms of your lengthability of climbing and everything like that.
Yep. Yeah. What I love about the way they've designed it is, listen, I love a good linear game too, where it's like, hey, there's one solution and they're going to help you figure that one solution. That's it. But this is just a very unique experience where it's almost like as they're developing it, they're like, I bet you the gamer or the player is going to wonder, I wonder if I ... And they have a solution for most of those thoughts you might have. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, if you're on that glider, if you move to one side of the wing, you can steer it. I was like, of course you can. Like little things like that.
Aerodynamics, baby.
You can put fans on the back of that glider and make it a plane.
Make it a plane,
right? So
that's literally that's exactly what I did. Yeah.
It's just it's out of control, and I love that. Like when you walk into an area and you're like, oh, there's like a pile of supplies there. It's like, we want you to play here a little bit. So like it's not so open where it's crippling. We're like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do if I don't have boards to solve this problem. There's usually always within walking distance a pile of something that the game's kind of like nudging you in the direction of like, come on, play, And I love that. I love that these soft nudges towards like being creative.
Yeah, like that third shrine in the snow on the tutorial island. I just played that one today because I just now landed on Hyrule. That's as far as I got. I'm very early on. But that third one when you're in the snow, I was like, I don't know how to get up here. I guess I'm just gonna cut down these trees and make a 4-log connection and lean it up against the side.
That's exactly
and
what
climb
I did.
up.
That's exactly.
I don't know if that's
how
you're supposed to get up there, but
I've
that's
done that. I've done that so many times.
That's not how I did it.
I continued to do that when I accidentally already got levitate also. So there was a way that I could easily just levitate up, but I'm still like, I don't know how to get up there. Let me build my classic 4-log solution
the
here.
4-log.
And I could have
so funny.
Instead
of just going
elevated.
under the roof.
Yeah, I could have just elevated to the roof. I'm like, sometimes again, I'm overthinking it. You know, there's a whole mechanic to get me beyond that. But
well, it's funny you say that because I was
4-log.
watching a guy who said that he was talking about because he had already beat the game. He's like, remember to levitate. He's like, I am at the end of the game and I kept forgetting. It's the solution to a lot of things.
You mean the ascend move?
Yeah,
the ascend.
right.
The ascend.
You go
I was like, is there a new move? Levitate?
Which is super sick, by the way. Like So speaking, compared to the first game, so there's abilities in the first game that you have, like picking things up, like sort of like telekinesis style. Yeah. So there's new ones in this one. And that one's just
way better in my opinion.
And it looks really cool. Like the animation of him almost kind of swimming, like this sort of spirally swimming thing, like through whatever the structure or whatever it is that he's going through, just looks super sick. And then he kind of pokes out, and you can kind of look around, and you can actually back out if you want, or you can proceed to, then kind of surface your way up, and it's just really cool.
I'm a huge Recall fan as well. In the trailer it shows you like when you'll see a meteor fall down and hit, and like it's very obvious, and the game's kind of like go over there, and you can walk over there and get on top of that meteor or piece of rock, and then recall, and it'll go back up to its point of origin. Usually there's a island up there with a treasure chest. There's a small little island. And it's just that's the only way to get up there. I never
thought about that.
Yeah, I didn't think of that, Kyle, and I found an NPC that literally told me, I was like, oh, I had this weird dream about me jumping on one of those and it going back up because of yada yada. I was like, oh, that's what you're supposed. Like literally, the NPC had to tell me, but like it was in a creative way, right? She was like, oh, I had this weird dream, and I was like, okay, duh. Like, all right, that makes sense.
There's always a treasure chest up there. Always go. If you see one, walk over there. Yeah.
What's the wackiest weapon you guys have fused so far?
Oh my god.
A lizard tail on top of a goblin's arm. So when I use like a goblin's arm, the lizard tail will like unravel and like so it's like a whip.
That's so cool.
And it is so strong.
Yeah. Well, I had
not
a
a goblin
skeleton
arm,
arm.
like a skeleton arm. Not a
I
skeleton
had
arm,
the flailing skeleton arm on a sword, and it was just flailing about.
Yeah, so I got that and put the lizard tail on top of that, and that's how I got my
You can do this early, and again, I'm earlier, so I haven't had as many options. But the craziest one I've made is when you attach a cart to your weapon.
Oh, I haven't done that. What is it? Just like a big mallet?
It's like a big hammer.
Did you say a cart? Like a whole ass cart?
Yeah.
Like a mine cart? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Ooh,
I put a glider on my shield, and I didn't quite learn if I could use it as a glider.
Sure.
But like I attached it to my shield, and it turned my shield into the glider, which I thought was pretty cool. Yeah. So it was like this big, like eagle-looking shield.
I accidentally put a claymore on my shield, which that's not like exciting. It was just stupid. I'm running around with a shield with a claymore on. I'm like, it's not helping. It's not doing anything.
I like how the game doesn't even stop you from doing it. It's like, I guess if you want to, go ahead, dummy.
It increases the stat, but it just looks silly. The sword just on the shield like that.
Yeah.
I had a red pepper on my shield too, and like literally, you hit it once, and the red pepper like blows up. And I put a red pepper on my sword. Same thing. It just goes away after one swing.
I like that dragon head looking thing that spits fire, and you can put that on your shield, and then you have like this shield that spits fire.
Anytime you hold the shield up, it just launches fire.
And you can get more of those heads from those dispensaries. So make sure you're always using those. Like,
here's the cool thing that I saw, and this goes back to, like I said, like this is just a huge playground.
Yeah.
And I think the people that hate on this game really miss the point of the game. It's a journey, it's an adventure, and it's just go do what you want. Like, yeah, there's a story or whatever, but it's about playing with stuff. But I saw this guy, and I'm doing it now. So I got a horse, and then I leveled up not leveled up, but you do stuff for the wherever you keep the horses, or whatever. I'm forgetting things. The stable. You do that, you earn like rewards or points, right? And then the next
points.
Yes, pony points.
Pony points.
Yes,
and then, yes, that is a dig. That's Nintendo making a dig at ponies.
Pony points.
Sure.
And so, anyways, you get like this thing for your horse that like hangs behind it so you can carry things. Like you
a
can
toe,
attach.
like it's a toe attachment. Yeah.
So what this guy did is he went and got like these laser heads, and he attaches the lasers to them, and they're ran by the energy. So you can, while you're on your horse, you can shoot the lasers with your arrow, and the lasers will start shooting the enemies while you're running around on your horse. And he's like, and you can get off and you can detach it, and you can literally carry it with like the force. So you're not actually holding it in your hand, you're just carrying, like lifting it.
Oh my
and you can just demolish enemies because it's just lasering them and
That's
just
amazing.
blowing up entire areas.
I just before I actually hopped on, I saw really quick. I didn't watch the whole thing because I kind of want to try to do it at some point. Clearly, you need a lot of like whatever the energy cells or like the battery pack thing, because there was a lot of the little symbols of the batteries. Dude built a freaking mech essentially.
What?
He built a mech, and then he used the ascend thing to like ascend through the bottom of it to the top where there was a platform, and he was standing on it, and the arms are just firing lasers like.
I don't know, man. That video again, you share that. That's amazing.
I don't know, man. like I don't know where this game's insane. This game's insane.
I'm lucky if I can build a boat that moves straight across the water.
Yeah, I know. I'm just not that inventive, so it's hilarious watching people create all this stuff and how it impacts the game. And like I said, this game is hard, by the way. Like I don't know if you guys have died a lot, but I only have 4 hearts.
Yeah, same here.
I'm focusing on stamina, and like I get one shot at all the time. Like I'll go in an area and dude will just go boop, and I'm like, thanks, bro. Now I gotta redo this whole thing. But the reason I'm sharing this is even though it's really hard, there are always workarounds. So I'll go and do something, and I learn every time I die. I know this is gonna sound like Souls stuff, but it's different. Like you're not getting better at the combat, you're getting smarter. And so you find like, oh, okay, he killed me this way. Maybe if I approach him from this angle and use this weapon instead, or maybe if I use like my use fire through my arrows or something like that. Like
I had to freeze your attack stronger. Once I started freezing a guy, then I was like, oh, then I can beat him pretty easily. I just have to freeze him. Things like that.
There's just I love the plant bombs. I use those on like boss fights. I'll like attach the bomb to my arrow, shoot it, it blows up. Like I just killed like a boss goblin because I'm at an area where I think I'm going into what will be my first temple or whatever.
Did you go northeast or northwest?
Northwest.
You went northwest.
I'm with like all the birds and stuff, like the falcons.
Yeah, that's the bird people from the first game.
Yeah.
Which everything like it's still the same map, you know. So like northwest is the bird people, and you have Mount.
That means the
Mount
game sucks,
Doom or whatever, you know, up in the northeast.
Game's terrible. It's the same game.
Copy and paste. Copy and paste. Same thing. 19 frames.
Well, yeah, I get it. It looks so strange and alien because like I've been to this area before, you know, and it didn't look like that. You didn't spend a lot of time in Central Hyrule, you know, whereas like that's like the hub of the game, which it sounds like there's a couple of people that are behind the rest of us, and this is just a tip, it's not a spoiler, but like finish the main story all the way until you unlock the tower like mechanism, because like you don't want to stumble across the tower and do a whole bunch of work and then not be able to turn it on to get it as a fast travel point. So just and it's really quick. It's like after you land on Hyrule, the very next thing that you do is like
isn't that where you get like the glide anyways?
And that you want to get the paraglider too.
You want to get the paraglider.
It unlocks all your mechanics, and then like that's a good spot to like start.
Then you can just go do whatever you want.
Yeah. I started exploring way quick, and I came across 2 towers and didn't catch until the second one. Then I'm like, I can't turn these on for whatever reason because I didn't.
That's a good tip. That's a time saver right there.
Yeah, it's wasted a whole bunch of time for me.
So, Jeff, you haven't been a huge Zelda gamer for really any of the games, but you're playing this one. You're giving it a whirl. What are your thoughts so far?
I'm still going back to it. That should tell you I don't hate it.
There you go.
I don't hate it.
That should say a lot, because like just imagine you guys grew up. It sounds like all of you grew up playing Zelda games. So just imagine that you didn't, just for like a second, and like
I don't want to imagine it.
And then
I don't want to answer that.
I know it's
a dark, scary childhood.
But like, I don't know. That's a childhood full of doom, dude. That's what that is.
You didn't get a crash course in light versus dark, dude.
I didn't.
You don't know the difference between Ganon and Ganondorf, brother.
Yeah, dude. Ganon's a pig and Ganondorf's a sexy human. You know. So, well,
that's right.
That's a good-looking dude.
That's some daddy energy, brother.
Yeah, internet daddy.
It's just an interesting thing, especially now that I'm very aware of reviews because I'm not just because I'm in the group and on this podcast, but because of social media. I'm aware of how these games are being received, so I'm going into these games going, so if I don't get a 10 out of 10 experience, then I'm wrong? Is that what's going on? So yes. I'm trying to let that go and just let me experience it the way I've done
that before. Basically. It's a little defensive. I felt that way going into some games before. That I'm
where I'm like, everybody's telling it. Nearly
you better wow me.
Yeah. Yep. And then you have clowns that are on the completely extreme side of the spectrum that are throwing these stupid bullet points at you that are just uneducated about FPS and graphic quality. And I'm like, no, I'm not part of your audience either. I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate this game.
Go in the unlock group. I'm not exaggerating. This guy literally made a post where he did the bullet point of what Zelda is, the 19 frames per second, 720p.
Sure.
And compared it against Redfall and said, see, there's a bias. I'm like, dude. Dude, I played both. Dude, come on. Can we not make this like Microsoft gets shitted on and Nintendo gets away with everything? Like, that was so bad. So bad. His name, by the way, was Burger Casserole. So
much like with every topic that you develop an opinion on, there's like no room for nuance sometimes with some games. I'm not saying I don't like it because I haven't played it long enough to fully form like a score-based opinion, even though I don't want to really do that. But my point is that I am just before the third shrine, and I'm really having a good time with it because there is a linearity to the training, I guess you would call it training, whatever.
You're in the tutorial area.
Tutorial island,
like 3 hours long,
Yeah, but like there's those constant context clues environmentally that Kyle pointed out where it's like they're throwing stuff at you and sometimes in like Derek's case in that one shrine, sometimes the stuff they're throwing at you is a misdirect and they really want you to do one simple thing. And but I'm not there yet. Obviously, in the tutorial island, it's kind of like, no, we put that there for a reason. We want you to use this ability and attach these two things together in a very specific way to get you across the lake or across this thing. Like they're explaining it to you and without explaining it to you. So I think all that stuff is really brilliant. Combat is take it or leave it for me, but I don't think that the Zelda games, at least the current era of Zelda games, are like, look at how good the melee is. I don't think it's trying to be Star Wars Jedi, whatever. Like, I don't think it's trying to be those type of arcadey, precision-based type of things. It's just more about what the arsenal that you bring in with you. And
it's more to me about strategy than it is about like your reflexes
or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah,
because
there are, and I don't know if you've learned yet, and it's very hard, but there is a tutorial. It's in one of the shrines, so you'll learn it. But try to master it if you can. But there's dodge abilities that once you learn how to do that, it basically freezes the opponent, and then you can go in and just melee like 80 times.
Yeah, it's like
you know what I do?
Devil May Cry or something.
The combat system is how you can stun them, and they drop their weapons, and they're like, oh shit! I love this scrambling.
They're scrambling around for it.
Yeah.
But it's so totally more about like using your brain, and that was what I was talking about earlier. Like they're gonna throw you waves of enemies that you shouldn't be fighting, or you're definitely gonna lose to if you have 3 or 4 hearts, or even if you have 6. But if you go into it going, okay, I totally screwed up. I know what I'm facing. Now let me see if there's another way around. How can I avoid them, or is there another way I can kill them? I think that's the genius of the combat. Is I find satisfaction, and once I'm like, oh, I outsmarted you. I mean, you killed me 75 times, but I outsmarted you.
So in a way,
and
the combat is its own separate puzzle, but it's a very different.
Yeah, because it's really complex.
That's a good way to. It's a good way to look at it.
There are moves that send you up in the air, and then you can pull your arrows out, and it'll slow down everything, and you can like
if
pull
you're on
off
your
some real
glider,
shots.
It's the glider.
There's a lot of different like dodging mechanics, so there's a lot of fluidity. If you're like zoned in on one character, you can do some side steps and a back hop and stuff like that.
You can parry.
The amount of times I've had a big mace swung at like my feet that hit the ground, and I've like backflipped over it, like I don't always do it. I'm not a perfect guy at this game, but like when you land it, it's just like, whoa.
Ooh. I mean, it's just like
as Derek said,
Jedi Survivor coming out when it did right before this game and me beating it, it feels like a great comparison for a lot of what's going on in Zelda. But obviously Zelda is leaning even harder into the you figure it out camp. But Jedi Survivor did have a lot of those moments those combat moments where you feel incredibly badass for dodging a certain move at a certain time, or especially later on in the game when there's a final ability you unlock that's you just decimate people with. And there's also those puzzle moments too, where you're in a room and you're like, so I just stand here? What does the game want me to do? And you have to YouTube it, and it's the same strategy that you guys have, or the same logic where you pull up the video and you're like, you just need to see 1 second, and you're like, oh, okay, got it. Shut up, video, I got it.
Shut up.
So it's kind of the same thing, but on a much, much larger scale. And I'm also trying not to let, I wouldn't call it noise, but people describing, like all of you describing your experiences, feel overwhelming, because there's a lot going on in this game, and there's a lot of choice. And I want to just approach it like I'm just trying to live in it as I'm playing it, basically, and not be like, well, eventually I'm gonna have to do X, Y, Z to.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is anything you hear online, you never have to do. You know what I mean? Yeah. So just like, and that's the same as the last game as well. It's just like where you hear people like you probably hearing me sliding on my shield everywhere, and you're like, what? You never have to do that. Not even once.
It's true.
The people that I'm almost a little jealous of in a lot of ways are the people who this is their game they're buying until maybe Christmas. Like this is their only game.
They're not going to play anything else.
And like they have all the time in the world, and every time the game they're going to sit down and play this. Whereas I'm thinking like, okay, can I get it done in time? Like, do I want to play some Diablo 4 in a couple weeks? Like, oh no, there's new V Rising update this week. Like I'm already thinking about how much can I get done before the next thing comes out.
Where are you guys at? Are y'all trying to like? Because this feels like a game where I feel like I'm gonna play a lot, these next few weeks. But obviously, I'm not gonna beat, and it's gonna be probably something I'm gonna come
play
back
it throughout the rest of the year, like I did Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, that's kind of because I think I built Breath of the Wild.
That's what I'm gonna do, because I'm noticing as I'm watching something passively or even paying attention to it, I can still pay attention as I'm playing Zelda, because it's a more passive experience. But I am noticing that I go, I want to put on some Zelda, and I just grab my Switch and so it's going to be that type of game for me pretty much throughout the rest of the year, like Tim is saying.
Because if you walk 100 steps in a direction, you're gonna hit like a shrine, and you know what I mean. Like, so it's really easy to be like, okay, well next time I'll stop playing right now. Next time
do they all have the glow?
I can just go right on the shrine.
The tutorial shows you they all have a glow, so it's obvious.
What's actually nice is to from up high somewhere kind of scout around.
They do have a glow. Yeah.
Scout around. You can tag
things. Is approach the game. I said Elden Ring, and I still agree that it's very Elden Ring-ish, but I'm not going to use Elden Ring as an example because that could also be like, well, is it really that hard? And do I have to fight all these boss? It's not that.
I knew exactly what you meant when you said it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. But I think the way I go into this game, this is how I'm going into it, and I would highly recommend it for you, is go into it like this is a Skyrim experience. Nobody goes and plays Skyrim and goes, I need to get through the main story. I need to see the ending. Nobody does that. They just jump into the world and they're like, okay, what can I experience?
You're awake.
I'm just on a journey.
There's like 8 missions in the main campaign of Skyrim. So like if you just did the main story, you'd be done with that game in like 15 hours.
Like, why does everyone love this so much? It's
Who spends 400 hours on this game?
It's kind of the same with Zelda. If you mainline it and ignore the optional shrines, you just like finish it in 20 or 30 hours, and you're like, why was everybody?
Well, apparently you could beat this game in 94 minutes. So
94 minutes.
True.
That was another one of their bullet points. Game of the year, 94 minutes.
All right, so I do want to address the thing that kind of, and I understand the criticism of the Switch. It's a 6-year-old hardware. I get it, and people are like, well, there's tablets that are more powerful. That's true. I hear what you're saying, but I've already taken probably 6 or 7 screenshots in my first. I've only played the game for maybe 2 hours, 3 hours total. Like I haven't had a ton of time with it yet. And I've already taken several screenshots. Now, are there moments that I'm kind of like, yeah, those textures are pretty bland, and they used an art style that allows them to have a flatter surface and make everything else work and look well. I've even had a couple moments where I had a lot of things attacking me that I was like, I'm no frame rate expert, but I'm pretty sure it dipped there for a second during some crazy stuff.
It wasn't bad. Significantly dips if you've got like 8 or 9. There is one part and you guys will run into it. It's not a spoiler or anything, but there's this guy you meet on the main story, and then later you can run into him for an optional mission.
It's so good.
It's super cool because he's like, "Hey, I'm going over here to clear out this camp," and I'm like, "Ooh, Far Cry? Okay, let's do this." So you go over to the camp and you clear them out, but there's like 8 or 9 guys fighting in this little area, and it will dip while
good guys and bad guys. So there's actually like 20 people like in the
there's
area.
Probably more because it's a full on battle.
Oh, that's cool.
It will dip when it's doing that.
I've never seen anything like this in a Zelda game. Yeah.
But I have not experienced any dips outside of if there's
not in normal play. Yeah.
No.
I feel like whenever something's on fire or a big explosion happens,
a lot of freezing, the freezing effect kind of made it dip for a second. There was like 6 enemies around, and one of them did it was one of those ice blobs or whatever, froze like a bunch of us, and it kind of dipped there for a second during that freezing enemy because there's too many enemies that were being frozen.
This game is massive. Like Breath of the Wild was already insane, right? Like it's like, how did something like to squeeze inside a tablet type?
This is like 3 times bigger than Breath of the Wild because like there's a sky area that's just as big, and then there's a chasm area that's just as big.
And there's no loading between areas,
and there's no loading, man.
You only load with like the shrines.
But right. But no, the open world, though, you can fall from the highest point of the map to the lowest point of the map into the cave areas, and there's no loading.
So I do want to say this as the resident like graphics whore, like I'm real like petty and I nitpick everything to death. And I know some listeners are gonna be like, Derek, you're just a fanboy. You're not gonna be real. I promise you.
Nintendo colored glasses he's wearing.
Yeah, I would nitpick this game because I'm actually playing it more on my TV or my monitor, I should say, than I am in handheld mode. When Tim started talking about it in handheld, I was like, all right, let me go check it out. And I was impressed. Handheld, it does look good.
Yeah.
But
even on original Switch, I'll say on handheld it looks, because that's the one I have for now.
Yeah. But on my monitor, and again, this is where I don't think people will believe me, but I promise I'm not lying. So I went and got a 1080p monitor, or I already owned it, but I went and picked it up, set it up, hooked up my my Switch to it, and I started playing it, and I messed with the settings, turned some sharpness up and all this stuff. This game looks absolutely gorgeous. I know Jeff was saying that he was running into where he could see
I didn't do what you did though. I didn't adjust any settings.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any of that. Like it looks absolutely beautiful. Like this game runs good.
Blurriness.
The color palette looks great. It's very clean.
Yep.
Both in handheld and again, I can only speak to my experience on my monitor. It's very clean. The 30 frames per second, in my opinion, this is not a shooter because I complained about Redfall justifiably because it is a shooter and it was literally yanking me. This game, yes, when I'm aiming with my bow and arrows, sometimes I can feel the aiming, but they gave me a fix too. That's in the game. It's not like me like breaking the game. And that's, hey, attach an eyeball to your
it's a homing arrow.
Yeah, and it becomes a homing arrow if the enemy is difficult to shoot. Like if the enemy's standing still, that 30 frames per second doesn't bother. But if I'm like trying to like catch up to something, yeah, it can. But overall performance and visually, and yes, I'm going to use this word and I mean it, this is a stunning looking game. Like the art style is gorgeous. It runs great. It looks great. Sure, I agree. Would I love it to be on a Switch Pro? Absolutely. But they released it on the Switch, and I feel like they did a good job. And I heard they used the Xenoblade Chronicles guys to help them make this open world.
They were
and make
part of the first one too.
So that makes sense. Yeah.
So these guys know how to do it.
Sorcery.
They know how to make
Monolith
these.
Soft came in for a couple reasons for the first
cool.
one.
I didn't know that. That's great. Yeah. And it makes sense. You can see it, right?
Yeah.
You can see the
absolutely.
epic scope that Xenoblade games have too is here. You know, the moment that caught me, because I think the setting in the first few islands is very kind of like it's kind of a nice autumn setting with that one little wintry area. And lots of really cool oranges and browns. It looks very nice, and the sky looks cool. Like and I was just thinking, hey, this is a nice looking game. And it wasn't until I cleared that island and the clouds part, I was like, that looks really good. And you can see the whole land below you, and you dive and you land, and just the way the light's hitting in Hyrule, and you can see in the distance. I was like, how does this game look this good? I have no idea. Like that was just my initial impression. Again, I'm playing on.
I think
OLED
it's because they're absolutely maxing out the hardware.
They have to be.
Yeah, but in a way that it's working and not like Pokemon
in a way that it's
from, like,
working
6
and
months
not
ago.
crashing.
Pokemon, yeah.
And,
You know who
like,
needed to...
Pokemon arguably makes more money as a franchise.
Yeah.
And, like, that crack team.
Oh no, it absolutely. It's the highest. It's the highest. Whatever grossing like property
IP
in the IP in the world. In the world.
Monolith
I thought it was
team
like just Japan. Okay.
Monolith team should have swung by the Game Freak offices.
Yeah, I don't think Pokemon is visually even close to being as stunning. Meaning, I don't think there's as much going on. So there's really no excuse for them to have issues.
This game is more ambitious tenfold than Pokemon.
Yeah.
And the reason how that game ran at like 4 frames per second at some points, like it makes no sense to me.
But I still had fun.
So bananas.
Yeah, I still had a great time, dude. I caught
know,
most of them, not all of them, most of them.
I think it's because they know that with Zelda that they can't afford the blemish, whereas Pokemon it's like we'll just keep releasing 2 or 3, or 1 or 2 a year.
Talk about that. Like, when's the last time a game has come out that has worked this well? Like nobody is talking about it, not except for the people who are like read the false headlines.
That's
about
true.
It,
that's true. Like every conversation has been about glitches with big AAA releases.
Yeah, for years, and I don't know how long it's been since the last time we had a game that was this functional on release. Like I don't know. Like, do you guys remember what the last one? Can y'all think of it?
It was probably a Nintendo game, to be honest with
you. I know the goalpost is different. Obviously, because of the hardware and what they're actually trying to do with the animation style, but like it's still, considering how massive the game is, it is on old ass hardware.
I think I remember maybe Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Impressive.
Me and Derek both said, "Hey, this game's not crashing, isn't that fun?" So like that. So maybe that was the last one.
I've had it for less high profile games. Like I felt, well, I guess this is high profile. I thought Resident Evil 4 ran great, but maybe other.
Oh, there you go. No,
I didn't have any issues at all.
I had zero issues with that game.
I think Capcom doesn't get celebrated enough for how high quality most of their games arrive.
That's a good call, Tim.
Yeah.
That's a good call.
Except when they take their games away because of ray tracing, they're just like, we're just gonna remove the game.
Maybe even the Dead Space remake. I don't remember hearing a lot of like, this game is so broken. Yeah.
So that's why they're doing remakes. That's the only ones they can get right. They're like, it's already done.
And let's get real, guys. This game is basically just a remake of Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. We're all apologists.
This DLC is huge.
You know what's funny?
I am a Nintendo cuck. I've always been a Nintendo cuck. So.
The comparison, and it makes sense to have this, is from Ocarina of Time over to Majora's Mask, right? Same engine, like similar, like same world, like similar look and feel.
Different games though.
But very different games. Even though there were some core gameplay elements, even the button layouts, you're like, yes, I'm familiar with this.
Well, even the assets were reused. But they're just reused in a spooky way. So like the whole drive was different. Yeah.
I think that's also part of like the story and lore of that game, and there's theories about that. How it's like people had said that it's like actually like him dreaming, like it's actually a dream that he's having,
and
that's
going
why
through
there's
the
all
7
these
stages of grief or whatever.
And like that's why the characters are the same. Like there's literally the same characters showing up in this place that obviously was not the same as
people that you met. Yeah.
So I think it's an apt comparison here, where it's like, yes, the core feel and gameplay, the way it feels to lock onto an enemy, to jump attack, like those things are all still there from Breath of the Wild. Absolutely. Even like the sound when you pick up an item, like those things are the core things are still there, but overall the gameplay, the powers you get, the way you can now interact with the environment, it to me feels very, very different. But
even as you explore, very early on too. As you go through like Hyrule, I feel like they're like the complaints that Breath of the Wild was empty. Sure, okay, whatever. If you want to complain about that, that wasn't a big deal to me. But you're right. But in this game, I am running into a lot lot of people.
I'm running into so many side quests.
They're giving me so many quests
way
that I'm
more
starting
than Breath
to go.
Of the Wild.
Bro, I was like, I'm trying to I was trying to do everything, and now you're just giving me more. And then most quests, even side quests, aren't just do this and you're done. Some of them are like that, but some of them have multiple layers. Like I'm doing one now, and clearly it's above my level. I think I went into an area that's a little bit harder, but it's this quest that they're like, hey, I saw Zelda, and so this girl's like, well, I'll give you this frog armor set if you leak this news story for me. Give me some more
armor set.
Yeah, it's pretty cool actually.
Yeah.
But there's like, you have to make her happy before you can do that, and you have to follow like 3 leads, And I did one of them, which took a long time. And the last, like, I'm not going to spoil it, but the ending of it was actually kind of a nice little twist. And you have like a boss battle, was very hard. And I'm like, this bee better be giving me at least one part of this set. And she's like, oh, good job with that. Now go to this next area. I'm like, what? You're not even going to give me part of the set? She's like, yeah, not until I'm happy. I'll give you one piece. So there's multiple like layers to these quests, and then there's rewards.
Story of Derek's life.
Yeah.
Trying to make the ladies happy. He's like, you better give this to me, B.
Better. But there's a lot going on here. There's way more going on in this game, and that's why I appreciate that. I'm okay with them using the same world, and I think Kyle just said it. Yeah, it might be the same map, but it's not the same map.
I actually prefer it this way in this case, because it's like
go in the areas that you've been to before and tell me they look exactly the same.
I haven't. They don't. Not
like
to me.
To me, this feels like, and it's insane thinking about it, because again, Breath of the Wild is so crazy huge. Like, this is just the second half of what they envisioned. Like, and maybe it's not. Maybe they really were just like, yeah, we made Breath of the Wild, but it's like, that sold crazy, so make another one. But it just kind of feels like a part 2. Like, it feels like this is like what is the second half of what they kind of intended, but they were like, oh, like, this game's already huge. This is part 1. Now we're gonna do part 2. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, it makes sense that we're on the same map. I don't understand. Yeah. Again, I think people that are complaining really aren't playing this game. No, I know that guy that made the post on Xbox. He is not playing Zelda.
They're going based off videos and screenshots and what they hear about it.
Literally, this comparing side by side. Like, well, the map's the same. It's like, yeah, because you're still in Hyrule,
you have to get your hand on the controller and play it. And from what you guys are describing, from once you're into Hyrule and going through areas, like, this feels very different. Whereas the first game, I thought there were awesome things to do and enemies to take on, but a lot of it really was, I liked exploring the big, expansive world that I wasn't getting interrupted with quests and people all the time. Yeah, but now I'm kind of looking forward to being like tasked with lots of stuff. So
and you still get kind of the best of both worlds. But that's what's an interesting take that you just said about the last game, Tim, is that like it's not really about like going somewhere so a check mark gets marked off somewhere. It's just about getting there, it looking cool, something you do there is cool, like fighting a boss, and you're just taking that memory with you and moving on. There's no reason for it to happen other than that you were just there at the right time in the right place. Maybe that thing isn't there whenever it's raining during the day. Maybe it's only there at night. And that's when you stumbled upon it, you know?
Yep.
So it's like, and so while that's still there in this game too, there's still a little more guidance. So it's like maybe there's a quest that maybe gets you up there now, or it kind of steers you in the direction where certain things like spawn naturally and stuff. So I feel like it still doesn't strip away too much of the magic, but like, I kind of welcome that there is a more direct quest and stuff like that in this game.
Oh,
and
yeah,
more plentiful,
absolutely.
because there were in the last game. They're way more in this game, I'd say.
I feel like there's more direction in this game, even without there being direction. Like,
I don't
you
even
can
think
it's totally optional direction.
Yeah.
I don't even think Breath of the Wild was empty. I think people who say that just like don't
They
like.
didn't
Just
play
want-
it.
There are plenty of quests tucked away.
They didn't play it.
Yeah.
in certain
They
parts
didn't
of that
play it.
game. Like,
It's
It's
just
definitely not empty. No,
It's not
There's
empty at all.
nobody that I've met, unless they were lying, that has played Breath of the Wild from beginning to the end and said, "Game's empty, gameplay's flat, it's boring, it got graded on a curve, it's nostalgia." I've not met somebody who's actually beat the game.
played it. Yeah,
Exactly. It's always people that played it for like 5 hours and they were like, the weapons kept breaking, the level's empty, this is overrated trash.
I actually Googled, this is, you guys are going to laugh at this. I Googled, I don't get Zelda. I literally Googled that. And I found a thread from Breath of the Wild where one of the guys was genuinely like saying, I don't know what to do about weapons breaking. I'm trying to save them and blah, blah, blah. And every one of the comments in the nicest way possible were like, the developers want your weapons to break. Like you need to play how it's designed. It's designed. Like, don't worry about them breaking. You'll find a new one. Like, that's the point.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the fuse solution in this game is a brilliant response to the weapons breaking, because
I
everything
agree.
in your inventory is valuable now. It's so
True.
cool.
There's a contextual reason for it too, because like there's this thing called the gloom happening, which is like that like red junk that's like everywhere. and like that's corroded every weapon across Hyrule. You know,
I wanted to say, like, from an aesthetic point of view, like I'm not like taking away points from the game whatsoever, but from an aesthetic point of view, it's actually kind of annoying because I'm picking up all like what would normally look like really sick ass swords. And like they're all just gross and rusty looking now, and it's like, come on, like give me a sick ass sword.
What Kyle said though is if you go underground, there are pristine weapons. So it's really actually pretty cool that like if you
when you come across a real weapon that's not corroded, like it's really nice, and like I got to be honest, when I first saw the fuse mechanic, I was like, this looks stupid to me, and like I'm like, and I knew I was the only one, so that's why I haven't voiced it until now because I know I'm wrong, and
the rock on the end of a sword looks stupid.
No, I'm like I don't want to put peppers on my sword, so I like mace them as
it looks dumb.
Like, that's
it looks
stupid
very
to me.
Pepper sword. You don't want a pepper sword?
Yeah, I think that's dumb to me. Like I just want a sword. I don't want a big rock at the top of it. Like I just want a cool claymore. I don't want like a dumb thing on it. But I have come around in a big way. I just don't care anymore. And now that I've like grown accustomed to being like, hey, no, it's part of the world where like we're just gonna savage our way through this world without weapons. And I don't know. I'm getting into the whole RP of it all, if you will. Where I'm like,
so this
I'm really
is the
getting
MacGyver
into it. Where I'm picking up weird body
Zelda.
parts and putting things on them. And I'm gonna murder people.
Just glue
with it,
a tampon to the sword. Problem solved.
And to turn it into a bomb sword, tampon bomb sword.
Bloody hell!
It's gonna be fun to hear over the next several weeks and probably months. You know, knowing how we jump from game to game, what we discover and how things go. At some point, maybe later in the year, when a couple of us have finished it, I could see us doing some sort of spoiler cast. But we can circle back to it as you guys play it. So feel free to bring it up in upcoming episodes. I'll be talking about it more. But what an awesome game.
Speaking of that, later on in the game stuff, a lot of the reviews that I did watch or read excerpts of emphasize that like the finale is just amazing.
No, so, I didn't hear any of that.
One of the best like Zelda finales, period. A lot of that type of talk. So that further emphasizes Derek's point about
that Zelda's
if you didn't finish it,
got it.
And you're just
if
you didn't finish it, then and you're kind of like complaining, like beginning to end. You didn't beginning to end it. And you're like, well, it's just the same game or whatever. Like, you just sound really uneducated. Like,
I'm actually glad you brought that up because I just real quick, and then we can move on.
Breath of the Wild was epic at the end too.
I want to call out David Jaffe because he is an idiot sometimes. This dude did a freaking show.
99% of the time.
And he was basically saying, and it had to do with Zelda. He was talking about the 6 out of 10 review. I don't know if the guy beat the game because I didn't read his review.
By the way, I'll just say that real quick. It sounds like a legit review, and some of the things, the qualms that he has with it, he had with Breath of the Wild are understood.
Oh, he doesn't like puzzles.
Oh, is this the guy who made the really low score? That's like
it was a 6 out of 10. But if you read the review, it's like that sounds like a 6 or 7 out of 10 to somebody the way they're describing it. So like I wasn't mad about it. I was more.
No, I wasn't mad. I'm not addressing that review. I'm just giving
my thoughts on that.
Yeah. I'm glad it's not a troll review though.
No, it feels like
I think he just hated. I think he hates puzzles basically. But like David Jaffe's like, I think if you beat 2 bosses in a game, and I know he was talking about like divine dragons or whatever, and you don't like it, you can 100% review this game. It's your right. Yes, but if you work for a professional like magazine or site or whatever, I think you should have to finish it, and here's why. Because most games,
I think so too,
has a story or they have in-game mechanics that can change a game. I understand from his perspective, he's thinking from a developer standpoint that if I can't hook you to get you to play the whole game, that's my fault, and I deserve a low score. He said that 1,000 times, so I know that's what he's saying. But I'm looking at it from a reviewer standpoint, I think if you're going to be able to review a product, you should be able to review it from beginning to end. At least the main like core of what the game is. Like if they have a main story, exactly. Yeah. I have a problem with you saying it's totally okay for a quitter to review something. So what if I just decide to quit? Like if I'm a professional reviewer, I mean, me on this podcast, nobody cares about. But if I was a professional reviewer that's going to go on Metacritic and I play Jedi Survivor for like 3 hours and I'm like, you know what? I just don't like this type of game. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. I don't think you can take somebody serious that way. And that's my issue is you're giving a free pass to people that are not finishing the game.
Well, Derek, even
I
more
just
than
think
that,
he's
think
ridiculous.
about the percentage of what someone, like if you play 4 or 5 hours of one of these 2 Zelda games, the most recent ones, Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, let's say you play a handful of hours. Let's say it's even 5 hours. What percentage of the content have you experienced? And how would that translate over to a game like Jedi Survivor, which is a much shorter game compared to Zelda, just in terms of the amount of content that's there. You might have played that for 20 minutes if you just do like the ratio of like percentage. So you're gonna tell me that a 20-minute playthrough of a smaller game is fair to make it like I just think that's a ridiculous.
Oh yeah, if you scale.
And
down
again, I'm
scale it down.
strictly
like
talking
ratio.
about a professional review.
I am too, Derek, because I think if it's a person saying I'm writing this game off, if someone says I played 3, 4, 5 hours and I'm not interested, I know I'm not going to play it. That's we all do that.
Do
if
it.
you're a YouTube reviewer, you're reviewing it as a personality, not on like the behalf of like a professional company. You know what I mean?
And you should just say that, like, hey guys, I stopped playing after this time, and here's like I'm giving you a whatever score. Like you don't need to play it.
Perspective, you know.
Yeah, just be clear about that. I'm with you there 100%.
But right in the beginning.
I mean, I can't get mad about a handful of, and in this case, really one kind of low score. If you look at Metacritic, I think it's the only one under 80. I think.
Yes, he is the only one under 80.
That happened with Get Out too. Like it was 100%, and then one guy came in and was like, "Not that good."
I don't know, dude. My white guilt kind of kicked in halfway through the movie, and I didn't like it too much.
I didn't like this at all. This is just like my family reunions.
Oh jeez.
I had one last question about Zelda, specifically for Dan. Dan, you just played Breath of the Wild. You just played this one. Do you notice any sort of like graphical increase or anything like that? Just being the person probably only here who played both within the last, 72 hours.
Not really.
So it's basically the same graphics,
Yeah, and again, I find this one technically I find it even more impressive in this one. And because you have the skybox, you have everything going up top. You said below, like to me, it's impressive that it's at least on par. Maybe certain instances, like I've noticed, like some trees look a little less detailed or something as they're kind of blown in the wind. But like Derek said, it's not an ugly game at all. Like it's a beautiful game for like again the size of it, the size and scope of it is bananas. So like the fact that they could achieve that on something as small as the Switch, to me, is pretty mind-boggling.
Well, and the coding density that it must take for all the things to be manipulated, like from trees to twigs to just everything, like it's not just like an open area, it's an open area that's almost fully interactable.
How is this game only 18 gigs of a download or
whatever? I don't know, dude. It's some kind of weird Nintendo pact with the devil that we don't understand,
It really is.
Monolith just like waves their magic open world wand. They're like, we just shrink everything down.
You will run.
Monolith
crazy.
Insane.
All right.
So are we wrapping up this conversation? Or?
I was going to move on to the next game unless you got something else.
We're gonna spend hours on this game throughout the year.
This is our new Octopath.
Here we go.
Yeah, we're ready. Seeing it?
Yeah, we're seeing it.
Let's do it.
This is Dan's stream if you're listening. Oh, it is Tingle.
You and me and Tim.
I knew it was Tingle.
Bro,
that's
why you didn't have. That's why you didn't have a lot of people on there. They unsubscribed right when you did this.
No, this got him so many. Views. No,
it did absolutely
not. He sold his soul to the devil, and he made a Nintendo pact.
But it was all in good fun. It was all in fun.
That looks fun.
No, that looks awesome. Yeah, awesome job.
All right, if you were just listening, you have to go to watch that on YouTube. We can't describe it for you. You have to go see it.
Can't describe it. It's undescribable.
Or on Spotify. We have the video version on Spotify too.